please explain, what do you mean by so-called African Americans or so-called black people?
So-called black people. Black is the color of my hair. Black is the color of this watch band. Black is the color of the hoodie you got on. So of course we're not those colors. We are brown, we're copper, we're bronze. We're brown people. That's our pigmentation. That's the color of our melanin. We're copper skinned people. The reason why I say so-called African Americans, because not all, but 98% of the so-called Africans that's in America are not African at all. We actually are indigenous to this land and we come from this land. So we have to quit acting like that all life started in Africa. No, all life stimulated everywhere. There have been black people on every inch of this planet since the beginning of this earth. You know, so we have to understand that and really do the research. And when you really do that research and you travel the world, you will see that. When you go to Asia and you go to China, the first people there that are still there now that they have ran to the mountains was Asiatic so-called Africans. The only reason why they put African to anything that's black, but that's not true. That's not true. Matter of fact, if you go to Africa, most of your African tribes don't even call that land Africa. They have another name for it.
Africa was not originally called Africa. We had a completely different name. The landmass we now know as Africa was home to many peoples over the centuries. Moors, Numidians, Nubians, Carthaginians, and Ethiopians. The name Africa was created by Europeans, and the Romans popularized it in the West as part of their conquest of the region, specifically the northern parts of the continent. The word Africa was Greek and Latin origin. Africa in Latin means sunny, and Phrike in Greek means the spirit of horror. The land was known by many names, such as Ortygia, Kofi, Libya, and Ethiopia. But what was the original name of Africa? The indigenous name. It was Alkebulan, which translates to the Garden of Eden and Mother of Mankind.
You start saying that these names are named after conquistadors or people that go on quest and take over things. So the reason why I say so-called African Americans, I say African Americans because we identify as that as black people in America. I say so-called because me personally, I am not an African. Now, am I saying that I'm not in a relation or my DNA doesn't match Africa? Of course, we all are family. The whole world was black before white people were created. I want to keep that clear. Everything was indigenous. You have indigenous people of African lands. You have indigenous people of American lands. You have indigenous people of Asian lands. You have indigenous people of European lands. The indigenous people of European lands was called the Moors. They call it the Dark Ages. Why do they call it the Dark Ages? Because it was ran and controlled by dark people before white conquistadors came and became oppressors over that land. Even in Australia, you have the Aborigines. So everywhere you go on Earth, there's a so-called black melanated being that originated there first. All life did not start in Africa. Many people are now starting to talk about that. There's a bunch of literature and stuff that's now widely spread and talking about these things. And America is one of the most ancient, oldest civilizations in the world. We have some of the oldest pyramids in the world. We have some of the oldest sphinx in the world. We have some of the oldest literatures and writings in the world. America is the ancient old world, and we can do a debate on this. We can talk about it. Anybody want to sit down and go through the literature? We can. I'm all game for it because I'm that confident in the research and the stuff that I did. The Grand Canyon is one of the oldest temples and civilizations of people, of ruins that have been left behind. And a lot of stuff in the Grand Canyon have been carbon dated, and it's carbon dated back to be older than certain things that are in Africa. We have an actual pyramid 20 minutes from where I stay. It's called the Cahokia Mounds, one of the most oldest pyramids in the world. The only other pyramid that I have found to be older than that is a pyramid in Mexico. But guess what? When you go to Mexico and you look at the populations around those pyramids, do you see Spanish people of light complexion? You see nappy-headed, dark-skinned people that speak good Spanish because them are your original Mexicans. You can't go to no geographical location on Earth that it wasn't melanated beings there first. Whether I'm talking about the Dominican Republic, I'm talking about Puerto Rico, I'm talking about Cuba, South America, anywhere you go on the land, you're going to see black people there first. And then all other people come from us. This is the truth. Science backed this up, biology backed this up, biochemistry backed this up. So when I say so-called African American, it's not to be derogatory towards African people. Them are our brothers and sisters. We are cousins through the genealogies of DNA and bloodlines. We are all connected. But I don't come from Africa. My ancestry line don't come from Africa. I come from the Shabti tribe of Louisiana. I know the tribe I come from. I know the zone I come from. We Chickasaw Nation. I know my people. We are not African. We not. We are indigenous to the Americas.
I was talking to a gentleman one time, and he was breaking down locally over here his ancestry, and he was showing pictures, but the pictures he showed me didn't look like traditional indigenous people that we see. They were all basically, they weren't fully black looking, but they weren't that light indigenous.
But see, but then you got the $5 Indian too.
In 1887, the U.S. Congress passed the Dawes Act, named after a senator of Massachusetts. The law regulated land rights on tribal territories in the United States. It converted the Native American traditional system of communal land ownership into the private property land ownership we are all familiar with today. Before it could convert the land into private property, the government had to determine which Native Americans were eligible for property allotments. For this to happen, the U.S. government had to make a criterion of which makes a person Native American and therefore eligible. The United States government also had to make an official list of who was Native American. This list became known as the Dawes Rules.
The government came up with a criterion that made a person a Native American. It was not based on how long your family was here, if you were here before Columbus and before the Europeans came, but the government determined what made a person a Native American.
The goal of the law was to protect the property of the Native Americans as well as to force their absorption into the American mainstream. A side goal of the act was to open up the remainder of unused Native American tribal reservation land to white settlers for tidy profit.
You got the Spanish conquistadors who came in and they made it amongst us on purpose to take over our identity in our land. So you see your typical older natives, they still got dark complexions, but you see them with straight hair and stuff. That's where integration and breeding came in. That a lot of decades after that, you start seeing them have the pointy nose, the long hair. Now they building teepees. We didn't build teepees, we built huts. So if you look at what they're doing and you see where they come from a different part of the world, but they migrated to the Americas, and now they got all the casinos, they getting all of these different, rewards from the government, but that all was to keep us out. The whole plot and plan is to create this mass transatlantic slave propaganda. Not saying that black people was not enslaved in America. We suffered from slavery. My great-great-grandma was actually in slavery. She used to tell me slavery stories, but that was the European man coming over here and taking their own land from them and making them work on their own land. We was already selling and trading cotton. I want to make that clear. They came over and took over our trading of cotton and our selling of cotton and put us in slavery in our own land. We are prisoners of war. It's a difference. We are more prisoners of war than slavery. A slave, that's a product. You make money off of it. You wouldn't castrate it because you would want it to make more slaves. We were castrated. That's your product. Why would you destroy your product and make you more money? We were prisoners of war. They came to our land. They took over our land. The strong ones of us, they broke us mentally. Then they made us work on our own land. How you think we did the shit so good? We're the best cotton pickers because we was picking cotton before they came here.
By the 1850s, cotton provided 3/5 of American exports, and the yield of raw cotton doubled every decade after 1800. By some estimates, the United States supplied 3/4 of the global supply of cotton by the start of the Civil War.
They made it seem like it was this big mass transatlantic slave trade where millions of us came from Africa. Where's the boats? Where's the boats at? Like, everything in history have evidence of the past. They done found pyramids in the sea. They done found Atlantis. They done found things in the Bermuda Triangle. Majority of the sea have been explored where they finding all these ancient relics showing us the past. Where are these slave ships? Now, if you research and you study shipwrecks, and if you study different things that was left in the sea from here to the Caribbean islands and from here to all the other different islands, you will find relics of our people leaving from South America going to these different islands. You will see that, but you won't find anything of significant amount of evidence that's coming from so-called Africa to America. If we went through this big transatlantic slave trade, then where are the true stories coming down from my ancestors and coming down from my family? I'm very deep into my family. I know my family's bloodline, where we come from. My grandma on my maternal side, full-blooded Cherokee. She used to chew tobacco. She had long ponytails. She used to give me buffalo quarters that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars now, and I wish I would have kept. She used to be in her full Cherokee regalia talking to her. I used to sit by her left hand, and she ended up getting like throat cancer because all she did was chew tobacco. Ancient traditions of Indians in America. And she told me where she was from. My great grandma on my maternal side was full-blooded Choctaw, a Chaptay from Louisiana. You have something called African ancestry, and guess what you got too? Indigenous native ancestry. Why is there two different blood tests? So I even think it's something going on with that, on what they're doing with these DNA tests that's automatically bringing us back to Africa.
In recent years, more and more people have been turning to DNA testing to learn about their ancestry and connect with their cultural heritage. This has been especially true for African Americans, who have often been disconnected from their roots due to the legacy of slavery and the resulting lack of records. Through DNA testing and genealogical research, these 25 famous African Americans have been able to uncover their African ancestry and learn more about their family history.
There was a test done where this dude, it was a white man, and he sent the saliva of his lizard. Did you know his lizard came back 34% Nigerian?
Since I had done this successfully in the past, I figured that I would try it with my iguana. I collected as much saliva that I could and decided to send it to 23andMe to see what kind of results I'd get sent back. After a couple weeks, I headed to the mailbox to get the results, and I just can't believe that this actually worked. So I plugged the results into my computer. As you can see, they tried to claim that my iguana, Henry, was Nigerian, Ghana, and Senegambian.
Nothing new is sweet tonight.
They also said that he had about 8% of European blood. I don't know what the heck's going on here, but I'm going to keep trying this with my other animals.
I'm just saying. I don't care if they mad at me or not. All I'm saying is research what I'm saying. I know it sounds taboo, but what happened if the biggest conspiracy in the history of lies happened, and is that we are indigenous from America, we come from America, we don't come from Africa, but in order for them to take the precious treasures of America, which we have oil, we have gold, we have copper, we have all of that here. They act like all this is in Africa. All this is here too. What happened if it was to drive us out, connect us back to Africa, for we want to go back home, and while we going back to so-called home, we're leaving our home and they taking over our land? I'm just saying, when you really think about it, then look, what happened if the maps is flipped? Because from my understanding of my studies, Lebanon, Illinois was called Lebanon before there was a Lebanon over there. What about Israel? Here. What about Judah, or what you would call Utah? This is here. You start getting into these old names. There's a city out here called Morocco. What about Memphis? Where's Memphis at? Memphis, Tennessee, that has one of the oldest pyramids here. It's a pyramid in Memphis right now. They didn't put glass over. That's a real pyramid. But then you have a Memphis over there in where? Egypt. What about Cairo? Cairo, Illinois. That's here in the Americas. So we have these different cities in these different states named after stuff that's in Africa, but when you do deep research and study, these was named that here before it was named that there. You got stuff like Milwaukee. That's an Indian tribe name. Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's an Indian name. Missouri and Illinois is one of your most oldest places in the world, where I'm from, one of your most oldest places. You got Chickasaw Street, you got Cherokee Street. And then you start seeing there's different museums around there that got all of our stuff in it, that got other people's faces on it. They have did this to the whole world, where they go around where ancient ancestral black people come from, they will change the faces to them, and then they'll take our history. So my belief, my research, my study shows that we are in the oldest parts of the world, which is ancient America. We are not from Africa. I do believe that all people of melanin descent do have some type of ancestral and DNA connection, but we are not all the same people, and we don't all keep or hold the same traditions. And I believe a lot of islanders, like such as yourself, actually come from the lower Americas, and it actually was a ship's trade there, where a lot of y'all went from the South America to the islands, but it didn't happen the other way, where we all came by millions on this big ass boat, stacked on each other like sardines, came over from Africa, from a port called Yehuda, all the way over to the Americas. And I haven't found any evidence that truly suggests that. Now, can you tamper with evidence and make things look like something? Yes, that's why we all think we're from Africa when we not. And there is no coincidence that You don't only have African Americans, but you have African Australians. You have African this, African that. Why do they feel the need to keep putting that name on it? Because they're trying to make us subconsciously identify with a place that is not really our home.
South Africa is about those who are living and working together to make that better tomorrow. But the vast majority have linked arms to build a new South Africa. Through love, happiness, and peace.
This is our home.
You believe the slave trade took place, but not to the magnitude that they say.
Exactly.
All
Yes.
right, I just want to clarify.
No.
For those
So
who
I
struggle
do
listening.
believe I hate to call it slave trade. I would call it prisoner of war trade. I do believe that we took against our will and taking over water, not this vast amount of water, but over water and went somewhere else to work for free, should I say. I don't think it came from Africa to the Americas. I believe it happened reverse, where we went to the Americas to different islands and stuff like that. I do believe that. And the reason why is because you can find evidence of that. But as I really research, I can't find no really good hard evidence of, especially of the boats and stuff, of us coming from Africa to the Americas. And look, I'm willing to have a sit down and talk. And if I find that evidence, I will change my concept a little bit, but it's too much evidence to show that we originate from the Americas. I don't think that all life started in one geographical location. I believe that life originated from Earth simultaneously in different spots. I think man developed in different places, and I think the development of man in different places do come from the same DNA. That's why I say African brothers and sisters are my family. But we have different traditions. Even our physiological and our DNA structure is different from us in Africa. Like I did a whole seminar showing the biological difference not only between so-called African Americans and Europeans, but so-called African Americans and African people. There's different physiological structures that's different. Now, people will argue and say because the geographical location, we have adapted in certain ways to survive in our environment. And I can agree with that to a certain extent, but still the facts are the facts. So I'm saying that we originated in America, just like the Aboriginal Australians, the black people, so-called black people over there, they didn't come from Africa or the Americas. They originated in Australia. Same thing as the Asians, who they call Asiatic, Afro-Asiatics. I don't think that they came from Africa. It's too much evidence showing, and I could do another seminar on this. It's too much evidence showing that they originated there. I think we, what they call it, spontaneous or simultaneously were created in different parts of the earth for a reason. Now you have to get into hybrid and gene selection. You just go back deep into the Anunnaki. It's all the same story. All the same story that comes. Yeah, but this all goes back to the same biblical story. Whether it's biblically, whether we talking about the Egyptian scrolls, the Anunnaki scrolls, all these different scrolls talk about a mass creation everywhere on earth. Only time I see where it talks about in one part, Eastern and Eden, that's talking about the Bible. And then even when you get into that literature, I speak and read fluent Hebrew. Eden was the whole world. Eastern and Eden was over there in Mesopotamia. So, man, look, we can talk. Look, I do this for real. That's what I'm saying. So people gonna get on here and cuss me out and have crazy comments. All I'm asking is before you do that, just study the whole matter. There is some validity in what I'm saying, man. It really is.